I live alone. That's how I like it. After my divorce 2 years ago, I bought a small one-bedroom apartment downtown. It's nothing special, cracked ceilings, two thin walls, a view of the neighboring brick wall, but it's mine. No one else's toothbrush in the holder. No arguments about dishes. No one leaving the bedroom window open in February. Just peace. That's why the painting disturbed me so much. It appeared on a Wednesday morning. I was brushing my teeth, halfway dressed for work, when I stepped out of the bathroom and noticed it. A framed canvas hanging neatly on the wall across from my bed. It hadn't been there the night before, and I don't own any paintings. I stopped cold. The room looked the same otherwise. My laptop still sat charging on the desk, the book I'd fallen asleep reading still open to chapter 9. But there it was, a painting, in a golden wood frame, perfectly centered above my dresser. It depicted a field, rolling grass under a pale blue sky. At the far end of the field stood a tall figure, just barely visible, wearing what looked like an old-fashioned suit and a brimmed hat. I could barely make out a face, just a smudge of pale paint, but it gave me the impression that the man was staring directly at me. I looked around, thinking maybe I was losing it. I hadn't had anything to drink last night. No sleeping pills. Nothing. I touched the frame. It was real. Wooden. Solid. No signature on the painting, no label, no identifying marks. And I sure as hell hadn't put it there. I texted my landlord, thinking maybe he'd come in for some reason. Maybe he thought it was a gift, or someone from the building hung it by mistake. But I got no reply. I tried calling. Voicemail. I stood there for 10 more minutes, staring at the thing, wondering if I should take it down. Something about it felt wrong. Not threatening, exactly. Just misplaced. Like a stranger smiling at you for too long. I went to work. But I kept thinking about it all day, not just about the painting, but about the man in it. The way he stood, angled ever so slightly. The way his blurred face felt focused. Centered. That night, I got home late. It was already dark, and the hallway light on my floor was flickering again, nothing new. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and instinctively looked toward the wall across from my bed. The painting was still there. Only now, the figure in the field was closer. I froze. My stomach dropped. I rushed forward and turned on every light in the room. It couldn't be. I had to be misremembering. Maybe I just thought he was farther back. Maybe it was the lighting. Maybe. But he was closer. Definitely. His face still smeared and expressionless, but now I could see a hand. It was hanging at his side. The fingers were long. Unnaturally long. I grabbed the frame and took the painting off the wall. It came down easily. No nails, just some sort of hook already embedded in the drywall. I set the thing face down on the floor and tried to shake the cold feeling that had settled in my chest. I spent the night sleeping on the couch. Around 3:30 a.m., I woke up suddenly. Not because of a dream, but because I thought I heard something. A scraping, like wood dragging across wood. It came from the bedroom. I sat up, listened. Nothing. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I turned over and tried to fall back asleep, but I didn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure, standing there, waiting. The next morning, the painting was back on the wall, back in the same place, upright, centered. The figure was even closer now. I could see the outline of a smile, not fully painted, just suggested with 2 faint brushstrokes. The man was smiling. This time, I took it out of the apartment entirely. I carried it down the 3 flights of stairs and dumped it in the alley behind the building, right next to a pile of old mattresses and a broken vacuum cleaner. I even took a photo of it lying there, just to prove to myself later that I wasn't imagining things. I left for work early. I couldn't stand being in the apartment anymore. That evening, when I came back, it was hanging on the wall again. Same spot, perfectly aligned. But now, the background of the painting had changed. The grass looked dry. The sky had darkened. The light was fading. And the man? He was just outside the frame. I could only see part of his hat. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the kitchen with the lights on, a baseball bat across my lap like that was going to do anything. I stared at the hallway leading to my bedroom, unable to go back in. The thought of the painting being in there again, after I'd thrown it away, made my chest feel tight. It wasn't just unsettling. It was violating. Something had crossed a line, and now it was inside my space. Around 2 a.m., I got up and crept down the hallway. The bedroom door was open. The painting was still there. The man had fully stepped into the foreground now. His hat cast a shadow over the top half of his face, but the mouth was clearly visible, stretched into a grin that looked wrong, too wide for a normal person. It reminded me of an old marionette, with cheeks cut deep and painted red. And behind him, the sky was now dusk, almost night. I turned the painting around again, faced to the wall, and left the room. This time, I didn't touch it beyond that. I didn't want to provoke anything. I didn't know what was happening, but something told me this wasn't just art. It was a window, or a door. The next day, I took the photo I had of the painting lying in the alley and went to the police. I must have sounded insane. The officer, a woman in her 40s who clearly thought I was either on drugs or messing with her, just blinked at me when I explained. I showed her the picture. I told her the timeline. I told her I lived alone. I even offered to let them search my apartment, thinking maybe there were signs of a break-in. But I could tell she didn't believe me. "This looks like a prank," she said. "You sure you don't have any friends who like messing with you?" I shook my head. I don't really do friends. That part was true. My life was quiet, intentional. I had coworkers, sure, but no one who would drive all the way to my place just to play a trick. She took my statement anyway, but there was nothing they could do. Let us know if anything else happens. That if stuck in my head all the way home. That night, the painting was gone. Not just turned around, completely missing. The wall was bare. No hook. No shadow from where it had been. No mark on the wall at all. It was almost like it had never existed. For a moment, I felt relief. Maybe I really had imagined all of this. Maybe the stress of isolation, work, and the weird little routines I'd gotten used to had twisted something in my brain. Maybe. Then I saw it. Not the painting. The frame. It was sitting upright on my kitchen table, empty. No canvas inside. But inside the frame, behind the glass, was a new image. It looked like a photograph, not a painting this time. A photo of me. From behind. Sitting on my couch. Taken last night. I knocked over the chair. My heart leapt into my throat as I backed away from the table. That wasn't possible. I don't have any cameras in the apartment. No security system. No mirrors pointed that way. And I certainly hadn't taken that picture. I ran into the bedroom to check my phone. No photos there. No sent images. No weird cloud backups. But when I came back to the kitchen, the frame was empty again. I didn't go to work the next day. I stayed inside with all the blinds closed, sitting in the corner like a lunatic, waiting for something else to happen. And eventually, something did. At exactly 3:12 p.m., I heard a knock on the door. Not the front door. Not the hallway. The bedroom door. I was standing in the living room at the time. I had a clear view of the hallway. No one had gone in or out of the bedroom. But I heard the knock, 3 quick raps from inside that room. I took a step forward. Then another. The door creaked slightly, moving inward. I swallowed hard and opened it the rest of the way. The room was dark. I hadn't turned the lights on. The blinds were pulled tight. But on the wall, in its original spot, the painting was back. It had returned. And now the man was inside a house. He was standing in what looked like my bedroom. The angle, the furniture, even the sheets matched. He stood at the edge of the bed, facing a lump beneath the covers. Something lying there. Something motionless. Me. He was standing over me. I covered the painting with a towel and nailed the entire frame to the wall, hoping that if I physically locked it in place, maybe it would stop changing. Maybe it would stop moving. But the next morning, I found the nails on the floor. The towel was gone. And the painting. It was showing something else. It was still my bedroom. Still the same angle. But now the figure was gone. The bed was empty. The window was open. Curtains blowing inward. And on the wall, opposite the bed, there was a painting. A painting of me. Standing in the doorway. Looking in. I left the apartment that morning and didn't come back. Not for work, not for clothes, not even for my toothbrush. I just walked. For hours. I ended up at a diner on 5th Street sometime afternoon, sitting in a sticky vinyl booth, staring at a cup of coffee I didn't touch. The waitress came by 3 times. I kept saying I needed more time, though the menu stayed unopened. How do you explain something like that? How do you walk up to a stranger, or even a friend, if I had one, and say, there's a painting in my room that's changing every night, and now it's painting me back? You don't. You go quiet. You disappear into yourself. You sit in a booth in the corner of a diner, trying to remember when you last felt safe. Eventually, I checked into a cheap motel out by the train station, the kind with buzzing lights and cigarette burns in the comforters. It smelled like mildew and air freshener, but I slept better there than I had in a week. When I woke up, it was dark. My first thought was, I need to see the painting. Not out of curiosity, not anymore. It felt more like obligation, like it was waiting for me, like ignoring it would only make things worse. I took the bus back. I told myself I wasn't going to go inside. Just look at the window. Maybe open the door an inch and peek down the hallway. But when I got there, the front door was already open. Wide open. I stood in the hallway for a full minute, listening. The lights were off inside. My neighbors' doors were all shut. Everything was silent except for a faint humming sound, almost electrical. I stepped in. The air felt heavy. Not hot, just thick, like a pressure system had rolled in. My ears popped slightly. The painting was still there, across from the bed, illuminated only by the soft orange glow of a nearby street lamp filtering through the blinds. It had changed again. This time, the man, or the thing, wasn't in the room. There was no figure at all, but the walls of the room were wrong. It wasn't my bedroom anymore. It looked like a hallway. Narrow, long, with wallpaper that curled at the edges and a carpet that faded into black. And at the far end of that hallway was another painting, too small to make out. I stared at the new scene for a long time. Then, very slowly, I realized something I hadn't noticed before. The wall in the painting had the same cracks as the one behind it in my real apartment. Same chip in the drywall. Same slight bend near the corner. It wasn't just a hallway. It was this hallway, but longer. Impossible. I turned away, feeling dizzy. I needed air. That's when I noticed the door, one I'd never seen before. At the very end of my hallway, past the coat rack, past the kitchen nook, was a door. Plain. Beige. No handle. Just standing there, like it had always been. I knew it hadn't. I walked toward it. The hallway seemed longer than I remembered. Like each step stretched the walls a bit more. The ceiling felt lower. My shoulders tensed as if the air was pushing against me, urging me to turn back. But I didn't. I reached the door and placed my hand against it. It was warm. Then, suddenly, violently, it opened inward. Darkness. Not just dark void. No lights. No sound. The kind of darkness that felt thick, liquid. It bled into the hallway like ink. I stumbled back, heart hammering, as the shape of something moved within it. I couldn't see it, but I felt it. It stepped forward, one dragging motion at a time. Not fast, not aggressive, just steady, like it knew I couldn't run fast enough to matter. Then, just before it crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut and vanished. One blink, and it was gone, wall seamless again. I backed away, clutching the edge of the kitchen counter, gasping like I'd just run a mile. That night, I didn't leave the apartment. I just sat near the window, clutching a kitchen knife, watching the hallway where the door had been. Nothing happened. Until sunrise. As the light bled through the blinds, I finally stood up and turned toward the bedroom again. The painting had changed. It now showed a figure walking down the hallway. Back turned. Same coat as mine. Same slump to the shoulders. Same scar above the right ear. It was me. Only I wasn't looking at the painting. I was walking away from it. Down the impossible hallway. Toward the void. I pulled the painting down, this time with both hands. I smashed it over the edge of the desk. The wood cracked. The canvas tore. I tore it apart until my hands bled, and I was sure it couldn't exist anymore. Then I threw the broken pieces into a garbage bag, went outside, and dumped it in the city incinerator 2 blocks away. I watched it burn, watched the canvas curl and blacken and vanish. It was gone. But the next night, I woke up with something heavy on my chest. Not physically heavy, just a sensation. Pressure. Something unseen. I opened my eyes slowly and saw the same familiar shape. The golden frame, leaning against the wall, with a new painting inside. A painting of me, sleeping. I didn't scream. I didn't throw it away this time, either. I just sat up in bed and stared at the new painting. It was smaller than before, the frame no longer golden, but raw wood, like it had been carved that morning. The paint was still wet in places. Thick brush strokes shimmered faintly under the bedside light. It showed me, lying in bed, just like I had been seconds ago. The angle was exact, like it had been painted from above. There was no background, just blackness beyond the bed, like the room had collapsed into nothing. And above my sleeping body, hanging in the dark, was the figure again. Not painted in detail, only suggested. Faint, shadowy, no face, just shape. It hovered over me, arms outstretched. The longer I looked, the more I noticed something impossible. The shadow's hands were moving. The brushstroke shifted slightly, just enough to break the illusion of stillness. A flick of a wrist, a stretch of fingers, but only when I wasn't looking directly at them. The moment I focused, they'd freeze again, like it didn't want me to see what it was doing. I turned away, grabbed the frame and shoved it face down under the bed. But all night, I heard it moving. Just small sounds, wood creaking, cloth scratching. And then, just before dawn, it stopped. That morning, I made a decision. If I couldn't get rid of it, if destroying it didn't work, maybe I needed to understand it. I called in sick again. Took a long walk to clear my head. And then I went to the library. There wasn't exactly a section for haunted paintings, but I found a few books on supernatural folklore, haunted objects, and something called idolic artifacts. The theory, if you believe in that kind of thing, is that objects can act as bridges between places. Not just physical places, but psychological ones, emotional ones, realities constructed out of memory, fear, obsession. And sometimes these bridges open by accident. Other times, they're opened by design. The key thing I took away was this. The more attention you give it, the stronger it gets. You feed it by looking, by noticing, by believing. I tried to stop. That night, I taped blackout curtains over the painting and stacked furniture in front of it. I didn't even want to feel its presence anymore. But it made sure I didn't forget. I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of scraping. Not wood. Not metal. Brush against canvas. Coming from behind the wall. I sat up slowly. Every part of me told me not to move, not to acknowledge it. But then something even worse happened. A drop of paint fell from the ceiling, right onto my bedsheet. Bright red. I leapt out of bed, staring up. There was nothing there. No hole, no leak. Just that one red drop. Still wet. I touched it. Paint. Not blood. Not water. Just thick, oily, crimson paint. When I checked the painting again, it had changed. Again. This time, it didn't show me. It showed a canvas. A blank one. Standing on an easel in a dark room. But behind it, barely visible in the gloom, were dozens of hands. Thin, long, discolored hands reaching toward it from the edges of the frame. Each one holding something different, a brush, a knife, a bone, a piece of chalk. And across the top, freshly painted in jagged letters. We watch you watch. I threw up. Right there in the sink. The words weren't just painted, they were true. I felt it. Dozens of eyes behind the wall. Waiting. Judging. Painting me as I painted them in my head. That was when I made the worst decision of all. I tried to paint back. I don't know what I thought would happen. That I could change the rules? Regain control? Break the cycle? I dug out an old box of acrylics I'd kept from an art class years ago, set up a mirror, and tried to paint what I saw. Myself. The room. The sense of dread curling in every corner. But I couldn't. No matter how hard I tried, every stroke came out wrong. My eyes wouldn't align. My mouth bent the wrong direction. It didn't look like me. It looked like him. The figure. The same wrong proportions. The same bend at the neck. The same long, curved hands. No matter what I tried to paint, he came out. It was like my hands weren't mine anymore. I stopped, washed the brushes, burned the canvas in the kitchen sink, opened every window, but it was too late. The next time I looked at the painting on the wall, it showed me painting him. My posture, my angle, my brush midair, my eyes glazed. And behind me, in the painted version of the room, was another figure. Not him. Someone else. She was facing away. Just her back. Long hair. Bare feet. standing in my doorway, watching me paint. I didn't know who she was, but I could feel it. Whoever she wasn't human. Not fully. That night, I locked every door and slept with the lights on. It didn't help. I woke up with the brush in my hand and a fresh canvas leaning against the wall, still wet, and on it was her face, finally turned toward me. I don't remember falling asleep. One moment I was staring at her painted face, and the next I was waking up on the floor, arms cramped around a paintbrush I don't remember holding. My knees were scraped. My lips were dry. The windows were shut. The lights were off, and the air was warm, like someone had been breathing into the room all night long. The canvas stood against the far wall. Finished. Not a trace of wetness on the surface anymore. The paint had dried. Thick. Layered. Complex. It showed me, not in bed, not painting, but standing in the hallway of my apartment, surrounded by doors. Dozens of them. Some open. Some slightly ajar. Some hanging crooked on broken hinges. Each one led into a different room. Rooms I didn't recognize. Rooms I knew I hadn't seen before. And yet, each one felt familiar. A nursery with a crib draped in cobwebs. A dining room full of rotting food and empty chairs. A hallway of mirrors, all showing different versions of me. A staircase that went downward forever. And at the center of it all, the gallery. An endless space, bigger than any building could hold, filled with hundreds of paintings. Each one hung neatly, organized, and all of them were of me. That was the last day I tried to fight it. Something had changed. The painting wasn't just showing me anymore. It was predicting me, deciding me. When I stood in front of the mirror, I noticed movements that weren't mine. When I blinked, the reflection stayed just half a second too long. When I passed by windows, I swore someone else's shadow followed my own. I stopped leaving the apartment. I stopped answering calls. I stopped being able to tell what day it was. Instead, I painted. Not willingly, not joyfully, but relentlessly. It became a ritual. I'd wake up with an idea already in my head. A vision that wasn't mine. I'd walk to the canvas, still half asleep, and begin to paint. My hands knew what to do. Sometimes I painted memories, twisted, distorted memories of my childhood home or the people I used to know, but warped into something unrecognizable. Sometimes I painted places I'd never seen, like a cold forest full of eyeless animals or a library with books made of hair. Other times, I painted people, real people, a man with a face like mine, but older, sitting in a chair and smiling as something reached around his shoulders. A girl in a hospital gown, staring at a TV that only showed static and teeth. A child with no mouth holding a sign that said, "We still see you." And then, eventually, I painted her again. The woman. She began appearing more often, sometimes in the corners of the canvas, sometimes in reflections, sometimes front and center. She never blinked. She never smiled. She only watched. One morning, I awoke to find 3 new paintings. I hadn't painted them. They were hanging side by side along the hallway, right where the mystery door had once been. The walls were blank before. Now, the frames were drilled in, immovable. The first showed me sleeping, just as I had that night. The second showed me walking toward a red door. The third showed me stepping through it. I didn't remember doing that. But when I turned around, the hallway had changed. It had lengthened. Where my kitchen used to be was now a narrow corridor of doors. They were all identical, metal, windowless, labeled only with black numbers. Room 1, Room 2, Room 3. The further down I looked, the more the numbers increased. Room 14, Room 15, Room 16. The numbers didn't stop. I walked. The air grew colder the deeper I went. The lights above began to flicker. I passed Room 23, Room 31, Room 52. I don't know how long I walked. Eventually, I found the door with no number at all. Just a blank plate. No knob. Just a thin line down the center. It opened inward as I reached for it. The gallery was real, just as I'd painted it. It stretched out endlessly in all directions. High ceilings. Soft, echoing light. Paintings mounted floor to ceiling. Hundreds. Thousands. Some were small. Others were massive. Some in ornate frames. Others just nailed to the wall. No labels. No explanations. but every one of them was about me. Moments I remembered, moments I didn't, moments I hadn't lived yet. I walked slowly, hands trembling. There I was as a child, crying over a toy I'd never seen. There I was as a teenager, screaming at my mother, a conversation I don't remember ever having. There I was, old and gray, holding the hand of someone I couldn't identify, weeping in a hospital room. There I was dying, over and over, in different ways. I don't know how long I wandered through the gallery, but at some point, I reached the center. And she was waiting. She stood in front of a blank canvas, brush in hand. She wore a long black dress. Her hair hung down like ink over her shoulders. Her face was pale, the kind of pale that comes from being painted in grayscale. Her lips moved, but I heard no sound. Then, in one smooth motion, she dipped the brush into something dark and began painting me. In real time, every move I made, every breath, she recorded it with a single brushstroke. I lifted my hand. She painted it. I looked away. She followed. I tried to scream. I tried to speak. Nothing. My throat burned, but made no sound. I stumbled backward, turned and ran. The gallery echoed behind me, 1,000 silent frames shaking on the walls. Faces blurred, canvases dripping. Some laughed. Some wept. Some tried to speak, but had no mouths. I reached the exit and flung the door open. And I was home again, back in my apartment. Morning light through the blinds. My bed, my sink, my floors. Like nothing had happened. Except the painting had changed again. It now showed the gallery. And me, standing in the middle, face upturned, staring at her. I didn't paint it. I swear I didn't. That was 3 days ago. Since then, I found more paintings around the apartment. Tucked in closets. Inside the fridge. Beneath the floorboards. One was embedded in the back of my toothbrush, hidden behind the bristles. I found another inside my computer, not on the screen, but in the reflection on the black glass. The worst one was behind the bathroom mirror. It showed me tearing off my own face. I don't know how much longer I can live like this. I feel them all around me. Watching, painting, recording. Every time I blink, I see brushstrokes forming in the darkness. Every time I breathe, I smell linseed oil and ash. Last night, I sat down and painted again. This time, I didn't try to fight it. I let it happen. The vision was already in my mind. Clear, precise, unstoppable. It was a painting of you. Yes, you. Reading this. Right now. Sitting where you are. Eyes wide. Heart just beginning to race. I painted the room around you. The glow of your screen. The shadows behind your chair. The thing standing just out of view, behind your shoulder. Don't turn around. Don't give it the satisfaction. It's not done yet. It's still painting you too. Just like it painted me. And the gallery? It has a frame waiting for you.